All right, this is the Big Douglas Show. We are live on a Friday. We changed things up a little bit. Usually we are previewing the game. We won't preview the third preseason game today. Instead, we'll get you ready for your fantasy drafts from NFL Networks. We have Michael Florio. Michael, thank you for jumping on with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm excited about it. And Brendan has been on the show before, and we're glad to have him back. Brendan, thanks for hopping on today. Big news for you today.
Yeah, Doug, you have me on every time I change jobs, so thank you for that.
That's right. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but I mean, I would assume a jump to Sirius XM is pretty exciting. Not that 980 wasn't, and Kevin Sheehan show. I mean, but it sounds like some cool things on the horizon for you.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun working with Kevin, and now I'll be over at SiriusXM on the fantasy side and also writing at 444. So very excited for that as well.
You know, it's funny, Brendan, as long as I've known you, I guess I didn't realize you were into the fantasy side of things as much as you obviously are. That must have been a misstep on my part.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't talk a ton of fantasy on Kevin's show, obviously. He's more of a betting guy, and he looks down on fantasy football, so he always makes fun of me. So it was a lot of fun.
Michael, first time to the show. We love to get to know you a little bit. How did you end up at NFL Network, and how did you end up doing fantasy?
So I guess the second question leads to the first question. I started playing fantasy when I was in high school. And it really is what, birthed my love for football. And I joined I was in a 6-person league in my first year in high school with a friend there. And I went from watching maybe like 1 or 2 games a week to I was spending every Sunday watching all games. And I was like, this is a 6-person league. Then the next year I did 12, and it's been something that I've pursued ever since. Started my own website in college, and then, kind of grew from there. And it's funny, I applied to the NFL Network job. It was a fantasy researcher at the time, a behind-the-scenes job, thinking it was in New York because that's where I'm from. And I used to walk by the NFL building every day. And then I found out it was in L.A., and I got the gig, and I was like, you know what? Let's go to L.A. And then from there, I was able to kind of work my way up, do some articles, then do some some video stuff, and then from there, now I'm lucky enough to have the job that I have.
Brendan, that makes me think. Do you have to relocate, or you still get to stay where you are and work remotely?
I get to work remotely, so I don't even have to find a new office, which is great. I do have to go in for my first day on Monday. Have no idea where I'm going. So my boss is like, "Yeah, just come in. I'll show you around." I'm like, "Okay, thank God," because I'm not going to know where to go.
How did you end up with the job change? Did you apply for it? Did they reach out to you? And what was that? What was the move all about?
One of my buddies, Drew, is a manager on the fantasy channel, and he actually reached out about them having a job opening. So I didn't even talk to HR. I just immediately started talking to some of the higher ups and got back around to HR at the end, and here we are. It's a exciting, quick turnaround.
The old adage, "It's not what you know, it's who you know," is serious business. But cool. I'm excited. Sounds sounds like a new step forward.
Exactly.
How many fantasy leagues are you in this year, Brendan?
Fantasy leagues, I'm only in 2. Best balls, more than I'd like to admit, or tell my wife.
This is a safe space. We ask everybody, so go ahead and shoot out a number.
Probably at up to 30 on Underdog and probably 25 or 30 on DraftKings. So
I love it.
Again,
Michael, what about you? How many leagues this year?
So much like Brandon, probably way more best balls than I want to admit. I'm trying to figure it out right now, but I'm probably in that 40 to 50 range for best ball teams, just like Brandon is. And then leagues that I'll play out, I've already drafted for 4, and I have at least like 3 or 4 more. So I always try every year to keep that number under in single digits, but it gets hard.
Yeah.
Generally, we do this segment on Wednesdays, and I'm always curious to hear from folks if they have, it's fantasy has changed to where there are so many different strategies with hero tight ends, hero running back. Michael, do you have a preference on drafting?
So my preference has changed a lot this year. In recent years, I've looked at the player board and been like, all right, there's like 15 good running backs. I want to have 2 of them on my roster because I loved the middle round receivers. This year, I think it's kind of completely flipped on its head. I really like the receivers that you can get in the first round, but I feel like in the second, third round, a lot of those receivers come with big question marks. Whereas the running back value in those rounds, I think, is way better than it's been in years past. So what I like to do is in the first round, I like to grab a receiver. Obviously, the draft slot kind of dictates whether you can or not. But I like taking a receiver there, and then I'll grab a running back in the second. Kyle Pitts in the third round, unless he's taken, then I'll have to pivot. And then after that, I tend to go hero RB, where I'll grab my receivers after that, and then I'll get like middle round running backs to just kind of, because I think if you get multiple guys who can be in RB2, like in one league, I have like CH, AJ Dillon, Rashad Penny. I'm like, if one of those 3 guys become a solid RB2 week to week, my team is set.
Brendan, I try to convince myself after I gouge through a whole bunch of fantasy advice from everybody, and I try not to go quarterback in the first round. And then I always end up taking a quarterback in the first round. I think that's because I like to stack them more than anything else. Where do you sit on that? Are you the same boat, or you try to wait as long as possible to pick up quarterback?
So I used to wait as long as possible to try to draft my quarterbacks, but now this year things have kind of changed a little bit just with the way we've seen really the top 6 guys kind of separate from everybody else. I'm not going out of my way to take a quarterback early, but if one develops or if I'm able to stack it, at least in best balls, I'm more open to that idea. Home leagues, I'm probably backing off of that a little bit. I just wrote something for 4 for 4 about talking about how you can take advantage of ESPN ADPs. And, you know, being on Underdog or DraftKings and seeing all the running backs and wide receivers going early, and you're able to wait on quarterback, whereas on ESPN, I think Josh Allen's like an early second round pick based on ADP. So like I would just take advantage of that and go running back, and then try to build my wide receivers from there, just because of the way the board is kind of breaking down. Like if people are going to be taking Josh Allen at like 14 overall, let's say, I can get Aaron Jones later, and I can get, you know, Jalen Hurts in like the 6th or 7th round. That's fine with me.
It's interesting. I believe both of you were in the Scott Fish Bowl this year. I don't know about you guys, but quarterback flew off the board. You brought up Josh Allen. He went number 1 in my league, and then quarterbacks just flew off the board. It was interesting that way this year. Michael, did you find the same thing in yours?
Yeah, it's funny because I'm trying to pull up my Scott Fishbowl team now because I don't, that draft was so long ago, I don't even remember who is fully on my roster, but I do remember a lot of quarterbacks flying off the board, and because that's a super flex format, and I actually did a super flex, it's actually this league right now, the flex league, ran by like Jake Seeley and stuff, which I'm the defending champion of, and the first 5 pick. I was pick 5. The first 5 picks were all quarterbacks. I got Jalen Hurts at pick 5. And then I expected the whole first, like, because I was in best balls where the whole first 2 rounds were almost all quarterbacks in Superflex best balls. And after that, there was a big lull. So it's just funny to me how in Superflex, every league can be completely different.
Do you how about this? Do you appreciate the way things have gone with fantasy football, where we've got 2 quarterback leagues, we've got no defense and no kicker leagues, we've got tight end premium leagues? Do you like the way that fantasy has kind of shifted to just, 200 points per game almost in a lot of leagues?
I prefer Superflex personally because I think it adds a lot of strategy, because typically we can wait on quarterback, and if everyone in your league is doing that, my co-host on the NFL Fantasy Football Podcast talks about it all the time. If we say that Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert are not only the best quarterbacks, but the best players in the NFL, it shouldn't be a strategic disadvantage to draft them in fantasy football. So I think that Superflex kind of adds that layer of strategy now, where you have to decide, do I want to take a quarterback? Do I want to be weak on quarterback and load up elsewhere? But my favorite thing about the fantasy community in recent years is exactly what you said. Like, You don't like Superflex? Don't play it. You don't like one quarterback? Don't play it. Like there is now a league. Like I personally hate IDP, but if some other people like it, play it. Like there's a format for everyone now, and I think that only helps the game.
Yeah, I just want to second that. Like the
Mhm.
different ways in which you can play, whether it's best ball, season long, dynasty, whatever, there's so many options now. So like if you're not happy with one thing, there's something out there for you. There's like some weird like triple tight end premium thing that you can do if you really want to do it, you know? So there's something out there for everybody.
The other thing that I've enjoyed, and I noticed it more and more the last couple of years, is slow drafting. I'm amazed at how many people. My wife asked me like a month ago. She was like, "Are you drafting a fantasy football team?" And I was like, "Yeah, but it's a slow draft. Like this thing may take weeks." Brendan, do you remember when that first started? I'm trying to, or either one of you really. I'm trying to remember when the slow draft really first started, but I love it.
I remember it started I mean, I don't know if it started last year. I just remember noticing it last year during best balls. I don't remember ever seeing it on like a I guess the Scott Fish Bowl has done that because I remember I was in it a couple of years ago with a slow draft, but I can't remember any league I've ever been in that was like a home league and had slow draft now.
So it's definitely become more popular in the last couple of years, but I remember, and this is going back like well before. This is like 5 years ago, maybe. My fantasy league was like the only place that had best ball and slow drafts, and like I just remember like this. I was like, this is an unheard of concept. I want to get my draft now, and now I love slow drafts. Like
Right.
they make it so much more convenient. The only drafts I don't like to be slow are like my redraft that I play out, but like besides that, I prefer slow drafts to regular drafts.
I sent you guys a list here all season long. We've been running through the Rookie for the Vets. These are some of my favorites from the season, so we'll kind of run through them and give them a talk. I've used Underdog ADP for this. Some of these are a week or so old, so the numbers might not be exactly, but I think it'll be close enough for the exercise. Michael, we'll start with you. You got Brees Hall at 49 or Cam Akers at 46.
I'll take Brees Hall over Cam Akers all day. I have him as my RB 15, and Cam Akers is around my RB 20. I know there's a lot to like with Cam Akers, but I think there's also a big injury concern there. Is he ever going to be the player he was pre-Achilles injury? Is Darrell Henderson potentially going to eat into work there? Brees Hall is a generational prospect, I believe. And while I really like Michael Carter, I do expect Brees Hall to kind of be like the 60 side of a 60-40 split, something like that. And I think I see a much clearer path to an RB1 potential finish for him than I do for Akers.
Brandon, go ahead.
I was just going to say I'm not really a big fan of either of them right now just because of the split that we're seeing with Michael Carter. But if I had to take one, it'd be Brees Hall easily. Like, I don't want any part of Cam Akers right now. We've seen what he did when he came back from the Achilles last year. And while, yeah, more time is better, but still, he did not look good last year when he came back. And for me, the Darrell Henderson speculation seems to be growing and growing from McVay. And he's not, like one of the guys that tries to hide his plans. He's pretty straightforward when it comes to it. And it sounds like it's going to be close to a 50-50 split with Akers and Henderson.
I guess I'm just being stubborn. I don't see it with Brees Hall. I'm sure I'll be wrong because everybody I've talked to tells me how good he's going to be, but I don't know. I just haven't seen it yet. Let's see. I got Treylon Burke at 78 or Russell Gage at 81. Brendan, let's start with you.
I would go with Russell Gage right now. I'm not really comfortable with either again. Treylon Burks is, working with the fourth team and not looking great in Tennessee. If this were a dynasty league, yeah, I'm obviously on board with Burks over Gage. But Gage did get the 3-year, $30 million deal, and Tom Brady recruited him. He was one of the first calls he made. So while he's got the hamstring injury right now, and he's obviously got more competition from Julio, at some point, it kind of feels like they're going to give him targets. Brady felt the need to reach out to him, and the team paid him. So I kind of lean Gage, but long-term, I would lean Burks.
I agree with that. I have Gage ranked higher. Gage, I think, is the much safer player, much higher floor. But I will caveat it with these guys typically tend to go around where you could have your starting receivers filled out. And if that's the case, and you're taking it all depends on how you feel about your starters. But say you get receivers early and you're now in the middle round and you're drafting a backup. In that scenario, I would go Trey Burks because I just think the upside is higher there. But all things being equal, it would be Russell Gage for me.
Let's see. Next one I got is Christian Watson, 112, Rondale Moore at 119. I personally am not a believer in Watson either. I don't see it with his hands. And I think Rondale Moore is ready for a big year. So I would take Rondale Moore personally.
I'll go with Christian Watson here. I have Rondale Moore ranked higher, but like first of all, he's gonna have to be used completely different than he was last year. But even like the Marquise Brown, Zach Ertz, I think will be the top two targets there. And then once DeAndre Hopkins comes back, I liked Moore coming out of college, but I did not love at all how he was used as a rookie. Christian Watson could end up being a complete zero this year. But I just think there's more upside there in the unknown because there's so much up for grabs in Green Bay. I know we all think Allen Lazard is the wide receiver one, and then the other pieces are kind of competing behind there. But if Watson is anywhere close to what the prospect they think he is, he could easily steal a lot of volume away. So I'll just take I'll just take the shot on the unknown kind of.
I'm going to lean Rondale Moore, but I do want to add my own caveat to that in that I don't feel comfortable with that. And his 1.4 yard ADOT or whatever it was last year, just so minuscule and terrible. I mean, yes, he's going to get the work until DeAndre Hopkins gets back.
Okay.
But after that, like, he's locked into 3 wide receiver sets, but if they run more 2 tight end sets because they took Trey McBride early, is he going to be sealing the field? I don't know. But I also don't know if Christian Watson's going to be seeing the field. I mean, I agree with Michael. I agree with Michael, though. If you already have a bunch of receivers and you're stacked up, you might as well take a shot on Christian Watson.
Right. Yep. I got that one. I like this one. This one's a little spicy. Rashad Bateman at 66 or Sky Moore at 76. I think this is a huge year for Bateman, personally.
Yeah, I want to agree with you on that. I think Bateman is the clear-cut number one option here. Bateman's going to be the number one receiver in Baltimore. There's really nothing behind him. It doesn't sound like they're going to be running a ton of wide receivers out there. It sounds like they want to go with more 2 tight end sets, maybe even 3 tight end sets. So Bateman's going to be getting the work. He'll be the number 2 option behind Mark Andrews. But Sky Moore, I was really high on coming out of the draft. I love the landing spot. Obviously, when you're attached to Patrick Mahomes, that's great. But it sounds like he's running as the 4th wide receiver. And eventually, I do think he'll probably earn more targets ahead of someone. I don't know if that's Juju, if he can not stay healthy. We'll see. But again, it's a long-term thing with Sky Moore. I just don't know if I'm comfortable with it this year.
Yeah, let's make it a consensus here. It's Rashad Bateman for me. I think he could be in store for a big year. He's a receiver unlike one Lamar Jackson has ever had. I'm really excited to see those two pair up. Although I will say this for Sky Moore. He's my pick to be this year's Amon-Ra St. Brown. And what I mean by that is I think he's slow out the gate. I mean, he's clearly lining up with the 2s right now. I would say he's behind MVS and Juju. He could be the wide receiver 3, depending on him versus Mecole. But I think as the year goes on, he'll get a larger and larger role in like the second half of the year. He could be really fantasy relevant.
Let's see. CEH, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 101. James Cook, 105. Now, anybody that watches this show knows I'm a huge Bulldog fan, but my bias aside, I think there's a big workload for Cook this year. I mean, Brendan, we know that they wanted McKissick up there, and he came back. There was a reason why they wanted McKissick, and frankly, as much as I love McKissick, Cook may have more upside.
Yeah, I'd rather have James Cook than J.D. McKissick too. So I think it worked out for him, and you don't have to pay J.D. McKissick, what was it, $3.5 million a year that they were going to have to. So yeah, that worked out pretty well for him. I'm hesitant to really decide on this one. I'm going to lean CEH just because I think he seems pretty locked into that number 1 role. I don't know if he's going to get a ton of the passing work, but I also don't know if James Cook is going to get anything near the goal line. He seems like a strict third down back, and at least on half-point PPR sites, I'd much rather have CEH.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with CEH, and I am a Bills fan. I just think the chance for him to have like a really big workload is higher for Clyde Edwards-Helaire because I don't think Devin Singletary is going to go away. I think James Cook is a really good talent. I think he's going to add a different kind of weapon than the Bills have had in recent years, someone that's kind of explosive in the passing game out of the backfield, but the Bills are still high on Devin Singletary. I expect him to be the early down back there. So while I like Cook, I will lean Clyde Edwards-Helaire there.
Michael, does the Bills tried to get McKissick and then they got Cook? Do you think that's a signal that they plan on not running the quarterback as much, giving him more check down options? Does that make you nervous about Allen's fantasy stock?
I think that is a great point, and I definitely do have some more concerns this year than ever before about Allen running less because, one, like you said, the checkdowns to James Cook could be huge, especially on third down. What I think they'll do is I think they'll encourage Allen to pick and choose his spots, and I think that we might see less designed runs for Josh Allen because there was a bunch in recent years where he would just snap the ball, tuck it, and like he was out. But I don't think we're ever going to see the continuation of plays that he can do with his legs ever go away because he can scramble out of pressure and keep a play alive. And then it's just, hey, are your cornerbacks going to be able to stick with Gabriel Davis, Stephon Diggs, Isaiah McKenzie, and those guys for 5-6 seconds? Probably not. And Allen has the arm to make them pay. So I think we'll still see a lot of him running in a football sense, but I don't know if we'll see as much of him scrambling and picking up yards with his legs for fantasy purposes.
Let's see. I like Jelani Woods at 175 and Logan Thomas at 180. Michael, your thoughts?
I want to say Logan Thomas, but with his injury, it's so up in the air. We know the Colts system always features the tight end, so at this point, it's just a dart throw. I guess I do lean Thomas, but Woods is definitely appealing there.
Yeah, Woods seems appealing, especially after his like RAS score, which was like off the charts. But I kind of feel like they're going to feature Logan Thomas when he comes back healthy. Mm-hmm. I mean, what we've seen through the preseason so far is Carson Wentz, I think, has targeted Armani Rogers like 7 or 8 times on his limited passing attempts. Yeah. So it seems like the tight end is going to be a feature again for Scott Turner. So I'd lean Logan Thomas. Obviously, he wouldn't be your first tight end this late, but if he's a dart throw late for you as your second tight end, I like it a lot.
Brendan, where do you stand on Scott Turner? Let's do a little bit of Commanders before we wrap up here. I'm a fan. I think you know that. There's a lot of people in the fan base that aren't. I'm not sure that he's had the requisite tools to actually figure it out. The league apparently is high on him if he can put it together. Are you?
Yeah, I mean, we had a call topic today about do you trust the offense to carry the defense for Washington this year? And a lot of fans are questioning whether or not Scott Turner can actually do that. And look at the quarterbacks he's had. It's been Alex Smith, Dwayne Haskins, the poo-poo platter that was last year with Taylor Heineke, Garrett Gilbert, Kyle Allen. Like, I mean, they've had absolutely nothing to work with at quarterback. And outside of Terry McLaurin, they really haven't had a lot at receiver. And now they're deeper at receiver. I'm not really sold on Wentz as a long-term option at quarterback, but he's a 1-year upgrade over whatever Taylor Heineke was. I think he designed a pretty good offense. Guys were open last year. Like DeAndre Carter was running wide open all the time last year. And Taylor Heineke just couldn't hit him. So I think he designs a good offense. We'll see how it translates with more talent.
Michael, where do you sit? The Gibson stock is plummeting. Is it sell time, or are you hoping to hold on and watch him get more reps than maybe people think and then sell later? Are you just passing on him and going straight to Robinson? Where do you sit on that backfield right now?
It's pretty much an all-out avoid for me. Like Antonio Gibson, it all depends on cost. Like I was talking about this the other day on the podcast, and I was saying that as of now, where Gibson is going, it's an easy fade for me. But Brian Robinson is getting pulled up. And if you were to flip Robinson and Gibson's ADP, then Gibson would be the one that I was interested in drafting, and I would be fading Robinson because I think that I think it's a competition, and Robinson so far is looking better in preseason. It would not surprise me if throughout this year, those two are kind of going back and forth. And then the biggest crutch against them is J.D. McKissic is going to have that third down role on lock, so much so that he was not playing in the preseason. He's going to have that 2-minute drill role on lock, and that is so valuable for fantasy. And this is an offense that is probably going to be in the bottom half of the NFL. So if it's a three-headed committee on a bad offense, it's just one to avoid, in my opinion.
Brendan, how do you see that thing shaking out? I know the fan base and seeing Robinson taking first-team reps or take the first couple of snaps in that preseason game still feels to me like there's a big role for Gibson.
Yeah, Gibson stock kind of feels like blockbuster right now. I am not buying at all. Like, I mean, if he still stays in like the top 100 or anywhere near it, I am out completely. I agree with Michael though. If the ADPs flip and Brian Robinson becomes a top 100 pick, I'm out on Robinson. I with the way the offensive line is shaping up right now and all the injuries, I'm not really sold on Brian Robinson having a massive workload. And if he has a big workload, I'm not sold on him being productive with that workload. The offensive line has been terrible. I mean, he's averaging something like 3.5 yards a carry in preseason. And a lot of that is on short yardage. I get that. But there's still times where he's running into a line and getting 0 yards. That's happened once or twice over the last 2 weeks. So I'm not really sold on any of the guys. If I had to pick one, if Antonio Gibson gets into like the 120s, I'd be tempted to go there. I could be talked into that. Yeah.
Michael, does Saquon Barkley still scare you, or is he draftable now? I've been debating myself about that for 2 weeks now, and I'm just not sure I trust the running back.
I am probably the wrong person to ask because my goal this offseason has been to kind of let's tone it down with the injury-prone narrative for a lot of players. And Saquon Barkley is, I would say, the poster child of it. Like 2 years ago, tore his ACL. It stinks. It's also a very common football injury, especially for the running back, and it's one that players tend to come back and be themselves from no problem. And then last season, he missed a bunch of time because he was literally running off the field and he stepped on a defensive player's foot and rolled his ankle. If that's just not bad luck, I don't know what bad luck is. So I think Saquon Barkley being a year removed from that ACL surgery now, another year removed, and being in an offense that I know people like to say Brian Dable's offenses completely, they don't run the ball. Yeah, they didn't run the ball when they had Josh Allen. But they don't have Josh Allen in New York, and every offense Brian Dable has been a part of prior to the last 2 years in Buffalo has been extremely run heavy, and they also feature the running back in the passing game. So Saquon Barkley to me is my RB7. I have him ranked ahead of Najee Harris. I would take him in the first round, but you can get him in round 2, which is just for me another reason to take a wide receiver in round 1.
Man, I saw Daniel Jones run all over the Washington football team last year. He looked a lot like Josh Allen, only against Washington. But yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, Saquon, when he was like third round earlier in the offseason on Underdog, it was a lot of fun. You'd be able to get Saquon and end around 3. And now I believe he passed DeAndre Swift for borderline first round. And I was looking on like ESPN. He's basically a third round ADP. So for me, in a home league, like Saquon is really tempting in the third round. It's a little tougher for me to get on board on like the 11 or 12, 13 turn. But that's only because I want Steph Diggs, I want CeeDee Lamb, those type of guys.
You brought up CeeDee Lamb. I'm curious what the state of the Cowboys are offensively. I guess you can go CeeDee Lamb just because he's going to get the workload. They've been ravaged with injuries. Let's start with the running back and Dak. Like, is Dak draftable with that limited amount of weapons, or you think the offense will still be fine?
I mean, I think the offense is still going to be fine. I mean, the injuries to the offensive line are kind of tough, and Tyron Smith is obviously one of the better tackles in football. And I forget who it was, but Warren Sharp or somebody put out the stats of what the offense did with Tyron Smith and without, and it's like a full yard per play worse. So obviously that's not great. I still think they're going to be able to move the football. They have an easy schedule. They're in the NFC East. It's not like any of the defenses other than Philly are really that good. So they'll still move the football. Obviously, it's not going to be the high-scoring, potent offense that it could have been with a healthy team and with Amari Cooper. But I'm not really worried about CeeDee Lamb. Like, he's going to get so much work this year. I'm all in on CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I agree. He's my wide receiver 6 entering the season.
I've been asking this just because I find it a fascinating question. So we'll wrap the show with this one. I'll ask each of you this. Last year, the Bengals offense kind of came out of nowhere to be really productive. I'm curious if you think there's an offense this year that you see that maybe comes out of nowhere. Like, okay, I hope I don't steal any of you's. Well, I'll put you on the spot, but I'll give you mine and give you a second to think about it. I think the Lions offense could be explosive this year and really move the ball. And I like the weapons that they have. So as long as Goff gives them average production, I like the weapons on the team. So that's kind of, I guess that's kind of what I'm getting at. Michael, let's start with you if you have one.
I like the Lions call a good amount. The Eagles were the first one that came to mind, but I don't know if that's out of nowhere. I do expect a big jump from Jalen Hurts this year as a second-year starter. You know what? Again, I don't know if it's out of nowhere. The Dolphins aren't really out of nowhere. So there's these. I don't think they'll be nearly as good as the Bengals. I think the Lions is a really good pick, but two offenses that I think could surprise people this year and just be a lot better than not Bengals level. Not saying these teams are going to the Super Bowl, but the Jaguars and the Falcons are two offenses that I think I'm higher on than consensus. And for the Jaguars in particular, I think Doug Peterson was the biggest acquisition this offseason, like going from Urban Meyer to someone with a proven track record like that. And then the pieces around him are much better than they were last year. I know a lot of people like to say, oh, they overpaid Christian Kirk, and they probably did. But the pieces around him, around Lawrence, are just much better this year. And then the Falcons, I'm really bullish on Kyle Pitts and Drake London. So I think the quarterbacks too in the Superflex league go out and get, like in the other day in my Superflex league, I drafted Mariota and I handcuffed him with Ritter. I think both of those guys will be good fantasy values for however many games they start.
Real quick before you answer, Brendan, Michael, I just wanted to add, which of the two Bama quarterbacks that you mentioned there do you prefer? Like, are you a Hurts guy? You like Hurts, like in actual, not just fantasy, but like, do you think he can get the job done for them in real football, if you were?
I do. I think because of just how dynamic he is and the fact now that he's going to have A.J. Brown, who can suddenly take a 10-yard pass 80 yards. He'll have a second year with Devontae Smith. I think I like Jalen Hurts more. But to be honest, those two Alabama guys are two of my probably biggest targets because, like Brandon was saying earlier, Josh Allen goes second, third round. I could get Jalen Hurts in the sixth, usually after like Lamar, Kyler, and those guys are gone. And I have Hurts right in the same tier with them. And my quarterback strategy is if I don't get Hurts, I like to take Trey Lance. And if I don't get Trey Lance, I'll take like a back-end QB1 and pair them with Tua Tagovailoa, who I think has so much upside in this offensive system with those pieces around him.
So the first two teams that came to mind after the Lions were the Jaguars and maybe they don't count, but the Vikings. I know it's kind of tough to say that when Justin Jefferson's a top 5 pick, but just looking at who can outperform their ADPs the most, like Adam Thielen's going as like wide receiver 30. There's a pretty good chance he could, jump up as a wide receiver 2. KJ Osborne is going almost undrafted in home leagues. That's a guy that could have an improved year. And if Irv Smith is ever able to stay healthy, he could be a top 10 tight end. And going back to the Jaguars, I love Trevor Lawrence, especially in Superflex, getting him as my QP2. In the new SiriusXM league I'm in, I just took Christian Kirk right before we came on. I love that pick. And then Travis Etienne, a guy I really like as well. I think he'll get a lot of receiving work out of the backfield. And speaking of guys that are coming back from Achilles, after we were just talking about Cam Akers earlier, I have zero faith that James Robinson, 8 months after an Achilles tear, is going to be able to be productive. So Travis Etienne is a guy I've been targeting a lot this summer.
Fellas, we try to learn something new when we do this. I think we've done that today. I really appreciate you coming on. I'll post links to your content. Michael, does the podcast come out on certain days of the week?
Yeah. Moving forward, every Monday and Wednesday, me, Marcus Grant, you could catch it on wherever you get your podcast. And we also do a video version of it on YouTube as well. So if you don't want to just listen to us, if for some reason you want to see us, that's your spot. You could do it as well. And
Brendan, I know you got the writing. You've done 4 for 4. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so I'll be writing content every Tuesday, looking at our rankings at 4 for 4, breaking down all the top 10 guys at each position. And that'll be coming out on Tuesdays, I believe.
Excellent. Fellas, thank you so much. Had a blast today.
Thanks.
Thank you for having me.